What's going on, party people? I had to.
Inevitable.
What's up, guys? And welcome to another discussion video on tiering and things like that. If you are new to my channel, I tend to do these, or I actually recently started doing these on whenever a mon moves up into tier, is banned, or goes down. I'll be discussing them on my channel. Now, with me today, I have a very, very good friend of mine and an old face on YouTube.
New on the block.
TonyFlygon. You can say hi, introduce yourself, talk about yourself.
Hi, I am TonyFlygon, as mentioned before. I used to, or might upload soon again as well.
Ooh.
Let's say will. Have it out there. Now there's no way back. Might as well do myself that favor. So yeah, I've known Joey since, what, 2009, 2010?
Yeah, a long time. Tony was one of my first friends online, and he's a very, very experienced lower tier player. Also, contrary to what I just said, Ubers was his main tier, like, for a long time. But with recent years and recent changes, Tony has been pretty much messing up every single lower tier up there in the best way possible. So I definitely wanted Tony to be with me on this video, talking about the recent Alakazam suspect test, and of course the results, just because he has the knowledge, and I think he's a lot more informative than I am. And
Knowledge.
shout out to my boy Ty Lopez. So if you guys aren't aware of what happened, Alakazam was recently banned. There was a UU suspect test, and it was banned from the UU tier. Now, this doesn't mean that it is OU. This means that it is kicked up to BL. And yeah, why don't you talk about that a little bit, Tony?
Yeah, so there was a suspect test going on, and the people have spoken. There were 129 voters in total, of which 94 voted to ban, which is 72.9%, so that's convincing. And yeah, Alakazam is now gone from UU for a couple of reasons. The main one being that it is too good with too few drawbacks, I'd say. And that mostly stems from its ability Magic Guard in combination with its stats and move pool. And the use Magic Guard gives as a huge boost to Alakazam's items in Focus Sash and Life Orb.
Exactly. I agree completely. Alakazam was one of those mons that the only way you were killing it was either with Pursuit or with Priority. It was such a pain for offense, especially with what Tony mentioned with Thunder Wave, and the fact that Focus Sash, basically, it would live a hit. It would always be able to get off a hit. With Magic Guard, you're obviously not taking Stealth Rock damage, so this is staying there. And Alakazam was one of those mons that could come in, get a kill, and switch out pretty freely. And do you want to expand on the Magic Guard and the Life Orb sets and things like that?
Yeah, sure. I'll go over them separately, I guess, because the sets are mostly split up in effectiveness versus different playstyles. I'll go over Focus Sash first, as that is fairly straightforward. With Magic Guard, giving Alakazam an immunity to entry hazard damage, it is a very reliable, no, it is the most reliable Focus Sash user in UU, or was, or even in Pokemon, really. Because it's just so reliable to take any hit, and with Alakazam's ridiculously extensive move pool and high special attack, it can find a way, find a moveset to support your team against offense, to check whichever weakness you have. Joey mentioned Thunder Wave before. Imagine a scenario where you're up against a +4 Dragon Dancing Gyarados, but you just take a hit, don't get flinched, of course, and then Thunder Wave it, and your problem's gone. That's a hypothetical, of course, but it's
hypothetical, but very realistic in the UU tier. Not just Gyarados, but Salamence, things like that. Basically, setup mons Alakazam was able to check. So again, it was hypothetical, but it's realistic. It happened. It happened.
And without Pursuit, which Joey also mentioned, which saw a huge spike in usage, by the way, Pursuit on a number of Pokemon that didn't commonly run Pursuit before, like Mega Aerodactyl, for example. Without Pursuit, you're just not chipping it. It's just staying at 100% unless it doesn't want to be anymore. because of Magic Guard, which is with its move pool, with Thunder Wave, its good coverage, with its high special attack, with Encore, with Taunt. It was just too comfortable with a Focus Sash and too easily checking opposing threats.
Exactly, and it had great coverage as well. Like there's Dazzling Gleam to hit Save Alive for the 2-hit KO. Obviously Focus Blast to check the Pursuit users in Crocodile. And again, Thunder Wave was so good because even if Aerodactyl wanted to Pursuit you, if you ran Thunder Wave on it, you were getting paralyzed. So you basically sacked your Aerodactyl to knock out Alakazam. Though, also, we'll go over the Life Orb set in a second, but I do want to say that, as Tony mentioned, Alakazam was one of those mons that actually forced you to run Pursuit on Aerodactyl. So that slot had to be run. There was a good Aerodactyl ran Pursuit just because of this mon right here. And with Alakazam gone now, we'll talk about it later on in the video, but that may change and that might affect the meta. That will affect the meta, and we'll talk about that. But basically, the Focus Sash set, Thunder Wave, Encore was a good option. Psychic, Focus Blast, Dazzling Gleam, Shadow Ball, those were all solid options for Alakazam. And yeah, you want to talk about the Life Orb set and the difference?
Yeah, I'll even quickly add Energy Ball to check Rain Dance, Mega Swampert too. Like it just does it all, and it's like any big threat, you can just go down the list, and there's a way for Alakazam with a Focus Sash to check it. It's just outrageous, really. But the downside to Focus Sash Alakazam is its lack of power. However, that's where the previously mentioned Life Orb set comes in, and especially with its coverage, which comes more into play with the Life Orb set itself, which also commonly runs 4 attacks or
even Calm Mind, yeah.
Yeah. It's also hugely threatening to bulkier and stall teams. Even typing matchups that should do favorable, like Dark types, it has both Dazzling Gleam and Focus Blast. Focus Blast is the more all-around but unreliable option, with Dazzling Gleam being more specialized and hitting Sableye very hard, which none of its other attacks can. But also Mandibuzz, a staple on stall teams.
And getting the KO on Hydreigon without having to risk Focus Blast,
Yep. As well as Absol, Mega Sharpedo, all O-code by Dazzling Gleam. No need to risk any misses. Shadow Ball breaks through Cresselia, the Blade, Bronzong, Metagross, you name it. It just breaks through, especially with a Calm Mind up. Or if you get it in on a weak attack or a status move, you can go for Encore, and then you have to look at your team, facing a Life Orb Alakazam, and deciding what to switch in.
Yeah.
It's a horrible feeling.
Exactly,
really
exactly. Especially when, as Tony mentioned, like, you have to realize what you're going to switch in. You don't switch in necessarily the same mons to Life Orb Alakazam that you do Focus Sash Alakazam. Focus Sash Alakazam is usually coming in on a free switch or a death, picking up its kill and swapping out. Life Orb Alakazam can come in and threaten the mons that are supposed to check it. For example, Mega Aerodactyl after Rocks dies to Psychic, whereas it could actually live a Psychic from a non-Life Orb Alakazam. And again, you're checking this one differently. You're still, usually people are using Pursuit to check it, but if you're bringing Metagross to use Pursuit to check it, but you're getting 2-hit KO'd by Shadow Ball, like, you're not doing your job properly. So definitely the offensive power that the Life Orb set had made it just as good, or not just as good as the Focus Sash set, but definitely a set that had its uses, and it was viable. It was extremely viable alongside the Focus Sash set. You want to talk about how it basically affects, like, what mons you use, as you said, Pursuit, but basically Alakazam was one of those mons that could fit on Hyper Offense extremely well, as just its all-around good check, sort of similar to, I don't want to say sort of similar to Whimsicott, but similar in a sense that Whimsicott will stop the sweep with Stun Spore, with Pex or Stun
so you
Spore.
don't get counter swept.
Yeah, exactly. Alakazam was one of those mons that just fit. It abused spike stacking, stealth, or even just any form of hazard was so good for Alakazam, especially the Life Orb set, because the Life Orb set, swapping back and forth between them, but the Life Orb set, like, Stealth Rock would make Okos, or 2-hit KOs into Okos with this thing. It was extremely, extremely powerful, and would you like to talk about how the metagame might change with it, or do you have a little bit more to say about Alakazam itself?
Well, I can do one more thing, and that's the 50-50s it forced with Pursuit
Yes.
after a new EV spread came around, which is a little bit out of special attack into defense, which sounds really weird on a Pokemon like Alakazam to invest in its defense. But the way that works is, and it's especially useful on Life Orb Alakazam because
You already
the
have the
previously
boost, yeah.
and the previously mentioned Pursuit users are sort of forced in a 50-50 because with the defense EVs, Alakazam would live a Pursuit if it stayed in. So the game is, does he actually switch out after you threaten the Pursuit trap, or does he stay in and nuke any Pursuit user in the metagame with its coverage?
Exactly.
And even with Focus Sash, you could switch out, survive with your Focus Sash, and come back in later should you want to sacrifice it like that.
Yeah, it didn't matter if Alakazam was at 1 HP. It was doing, the only difference was obviously it died to one hit, but it was still, it's the speed. You were only dealing with it with priority or hoping to tank a hit. Like Alakazam could do its job at 1 HP, at 2 HP, at full HP. Obviously not the job of Thunder Waving and checking him on, but it just, the speed it had and the power, 372 speed, ridiculous. And like Tony also mentioned before, the Life Orb Combine set was so good versus bulky offensive teams, being able to always outspeed those Mons and just taking them on. So definitely one of those Mons that could abuse both items and Magic Guard extremely well. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, and I think if it's okay if I go on to the Pursuit, like I want to kind of talk about Pursuit and how Alakazam being gone is going to change that a bit. I think that's okay. You're good with that, Tony?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right,
sure.
awesome. So, Pursuit on Mega Aerodactyl was one of the big things. Alakazam usage, or Alakazam being in the tier, was one of the things. Like, Aerodactyl is an S-class UU-mon, or S-rank S-class, S-rank UU-mon for good reason, being able to check a plethora of Mons in the tier. But Alakazam also made that usage what it is, because you would need Aerodactyl on offense or even on bulky offense just to check Alakazam, unless you're running like Crocodile with Pursuit, maybe Venogross with Pursuit, even Pursuit the Blade. SD Pursuit the Blade also became a set just because of this Mon itself. But Aerodactyl now not being forced to run Pursuit is good and interesting for the metagame itself, because obviously now that Alakazam is gone, you don't necessarily need Pursuit on your team, which means you can open up moves for Hone Claws, for specific coverage move. Like typically I would run Stone Edge, Wing Attack, Pursuit, Roost, but now I could run maybe Aqua Tail, now I can run Hone Claws in itself, a bunch of different sets like that, and obviously helping out versus bulkier offensive teams. But as well as this does help Mons that hated Pursuit on Aerodactyl alongside Alakazam, and I think Tony was going to talk about this. I'm pretty sure he knows which Mon I'm talking about. It's a nice jack-o'-lantern out here, Chandelier. And do you want to talk about that one a little bit?
Yeah, it's something Joey and I talked about before. Chandelier is a huge victim of Alakazam indirectly, because Alakazam spikes usage of stuff like Mega Aerodactyl with Pursuit, Crocodile, and it's not a good environment for Chandelier to be in right now. I want to quickly add to that, though, that just because Alakazam is gone, that doesn't mean Pursuit is no
100% gone.
option.
Yeah.
Because Pursuit is still very good, also on Mega Aerodactyl. It's just not a necessity anymore for most teams, because some teams would just get annihilated by Alakazam, and most other Pokemon in the metagame are able to be chipped. That's not a concept with Alakazam at all. You just don't do that. You either kill it or it's at full. That's kind of how it works.
Exactly how it works. Yep. Agreed 100%.
But yeah, Chandelier is one of those Pokemon. I'm thinking there's going to be alternative Psychic types that are going to be used. Maybe stuff like Calm Mind Cresselia or Nasty Plot Zelf instead of just Stealth Rock leads. Those are options that could move forward. Or I was thinking maybe offensive Pokemon that are very easily checked by Alakazam, like Infernape, which is still a good Pokemon, of course. Especially if you've played DPP, you know the damage it can do. But specifically,
like setup Infernape is something cool, like the SD and Nasty Plot. especially because they have their priority moves are Mach Punch and Vacuum Wave. So with Alakazam being gone, that definitely opens up a door. Vacuum Wave being able to deal with Hydreigon, Scarf Hydreigon, killing it with +2 and Stealth Rock 100%. And as Tony said, it just opens up that door for these slower, strong-hitting mons, but that feared Alakazam because they weren't able to do their job extremely well because Aerodactyl and Alakazam were everywhere to either check the metagame or check each other. And yeah, you can keep going. My bad, bro.
No, it's okay. Yeah, no, that's basically it. That's just the lack of one Pokemon could see the rise of another. I think in the same window, Nasty Plot Lucario is pretty similar. Also, the only priority move that can hit Alakazam with is Vacuum Wave. That doesn't go, of course, for the Sword Stance set, although that would be checked by Focus Sash Alakazam, which is part of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roserade maybe too. The Life Orb set, that's also a big threat. Could be anyway. It's very strong, but easily OHKO'd and outsped by Alakazam. And so there's a bunch because Alakazam just checks a bunch. And it's also worth noting that I think a large percentage of the ban votes weren't necessarily. I'm not saying a large percent. I think a portion, maybe is a better wording, is not necessarily because, by definition, Alakazam itself is broken, but Alakazam in combination with stuff like Salamence, Hydreigon, Sylveon, there's so much of these ridiculously hard to build around Pokemon in UU right now that it just became too much, and some of it had to go. Yeah,
in order to push the metagame forward to help, you needed to get rid of. So it wasn't necessarily that Alakazam was ridiculously overpowered. It wasn't like, I don't really want to give an example and like feel bad about it later, but it wasn't like, for an example, Mega Salamence in OU. It wasn't the fact that it could just set up on everything in the entire tier and beat everything, even its checks and counters. No, but it was more like a mon, let's say, I guess comparable to, again, I don't want to compare it to certain things, but like Hoopa Unbound, comparable in the sense that it was really hard to switch into, and it forced certain plays, and I feel bad already just saying that, like comparing it to another from a different tier, but it was like a mon that forced certain play styles, beat up on bulkier offensive teams, fatter teams, and
almost forced you to run Pursuit too.
Exactly, it forced you to run Pursuit. So Hoopa, in a sense that it beat up on other teams and forced certain play styles, but definitely not Hoopa. Definitely not Hoopa. Okay? Forget I even mentioned that. Don't even mention that. Don't even mention Mega Salamence. Don't. Okay? I don't want people to say, oh, but this mon was this. This isn't a discussion about that. I just was looking for a mon to compare. And they're obviously two different mons. But again, you would think that in a metagame where Sylveon came down, Conkeldurr came down, Alakazam might not be able to do its damage just because, well, for example, Sylveon isn't like 2-hit KO'd, but Sylveon doesn't have Pursuit. Which is another thing, like, even these mons that could take hits, they weren't killing Alakazam or taking damage off of Alakazam unless Alakazam allowed you to. And by that we mean unless Alakazam stayed in, went for Thunder Wave, went for Calm Mind, knowing he could take a hit and knock you out the next turn. So definitely, I agree 100% with Tony that Alakazam wasn't necessarily broken in its own regard, but in a metagame where you have all these threats, you need to let some go in order to progress the metagame, in order to fix it up a bit, make team building a little bit easier, and change certain things. So I agree with that 100%.
There is also serious arguments to be made that it in itself is also broken.
Yeah.
But the fact that the combination of UU's top tier threats is too much, that doesn't hurt. So I think it's a good ban. I support it fully. And I think UU is going to be better for it. And while you may think that trying to go through drastic changes right before a new generation is about to come along is pointless, it isn't, because older generation metagames are still being competitively played
all the time,
frequently, on the tournament scene. So it is in all of our best interests as UU players to try and shape the metagame as best we can before Sun and Moon comes around. And I think getting rid of Alakazam is a good step toward that.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% would agree with Tony. And do you think any other like big change you'll see will come up with the with Alakazam drop? or Alakazam raise or ban, whatever you want to call it? Because we
no,
already
think
mentioned psychic
most,
types and things. Yeah.
yeah, I think the metagame is gonna shift maybe a bit bulkier again. I think stuff like Cresselia could be filling in the void. Reuniclus too.
Yeah.
As psychic types, because most offensive psychic types aren't as good as Alakazam.
Yeah, and they also just hated the fact that Alakazam, as we mentioned before, made certain mons be run like Pursuit Crocodile, Mega Aerodactyl, and things like that. And going back to like Chandelure could even rock. It can actually start switching out potentially. It could rock Sub Calm Mind, it could rock Sub Wisp Hex, which is pretty cool, especially because Aerodactyl, if it is dropping Pursuit, you'll be able to Will-O-Wisp it and then switch out, and then Hex later, doing a hell of a lot. So
yeah, I think that's the main difference too for Chandelure compared to the 5th generation, where it was
able to just spam Shadow Ball and Fire move with no counters in the tier.
And it was just banned from UU.
Yeah.
It was too good, too strong, and unmatched. Whereas in this generation, it isn't, because there's too much that punishes it from being in, and then it just gets checked and it's removed. And it's just a trade, and it's not always worth a slot. But that doesn't mean Chandelure is necessarily bad on all teams or all sets. Joey mentioned a couple. Sub Calm Mind could single-handedly beat a defensive team.
Yeah.
Without looking back. Like, it's very threatening and should always be looked at when building a team. But it's a harsh environment, which could be improved. I'm still not suspecting Chandelure in particular to immediately
rise up,
claim its race to fame, but not like in 5th gen anyway. It helps, I think. It's gonna help, and I do think in general, usage-wise, not necessarily viability-wise, but usage-wise, Pursuit is gonna drop in significantly, and
it also opens up a door for other megas being used over Aerodactyl. Not that Mega Sceptile wasn't used, but now. Like, for example, you guys know I played a few UU games for the Smogon Premier League, and I was finding myself using Aerodactyl so many times specifically because of Alakazam. And now, with UU dropping Zam, I have options to use. Not that I didn't have options before, but I can use like Mega Absol, even Fabio, or Mega Ampharos, and Mega Beedrill also, if Pursuit is gone. Or if Pursuit stops being, or if Pursuit usage does go down, Mega Beedrill is a mon that really benefits from that, because Mega Aerodactyl checks Mega Beedrill 1000% of the time, and with Pursuit being gone, you're actually free to U-turn at certain points. So, if you have already Mega'd before Aerodactyl is Mega'd, meaning because Aerodactyl does outspeed you after the Mega, but not before the Mega.
Yeah,
so,
and after that, it's a 50-50 too.
Exactly.
Alakazam is Aerodactyl would be faster than Beedrill, so does it Aerial Ace or does it Pursuit?
Yeah. Exactly.
And there you are. Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add about that, or?
I think it's worth noting that Mega Aerodactyl is probably still going to be the best Mega.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. This thing, Amon is so good at what it does. It checks every single other Mega, besides like Aggron. It checks the offensive Megas, and it checks so much in the tier.
Yeah, it's just useful. It checks many boxes when you're building a team. You want to make sure you're not weak to this, and this.
Yeah, that's
that
like, speed as well.
Mega Aerodactyl actually covers all of those.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
Yep. It's just one of those great mons. Yeah, so I think Mega Aerodactyl is where it is for a reason, and I do think other mons in the tier, like Alakazam, like Beedrill, all made Mega Aerodactyl what it is. But definitely with the Alakazam ban, we'll see how UU actually changes. But again, I do agree 100% that Mega Aerodactyl is still like the best Mega in this tier, simply because it's so good at what it does, and it's so easy to drop on teams. But yeah, guys, I think that's going to be it. I do want you guys to leave your opinions, of course, down below. Discuss whatever you think. Like, you might say, okay, I don't think Mega Alakazam was broken, I just ran Pursuit on your Aerodactyl, but the fact that you're just saying that you're forced to run Pursuit on your Aerodactyl to change it, makes you think, wow, Alakazam was so dominant, like, it forced me to do a certain thing, so that's what you say that's what you would call over-centralizing to an extent. So, Yeah, go ahead and check out Tony. He will be uploading soon. He has a new computer. I told him, Tony, I told him you have a new computer. I hope you don't.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
You were
Yeah, I
here,
like it
so.
too. The computer.
Yeah, so definitely go ahead and check out Tony. Very, very skilled battler. His analysis is on point, and he is one of my favorite old school uploaders. No shade to him. Not that he's not going to be one of my favorite new uploaders when he starts uploading.
No, I thought you meant that. I didn't anyway.
But yeah, go ahead and check out Tony, and we'll see you guys next time. Actually, Tony will more than likely be joining me on the Combustion Chicken Pass whenever that is, whenever we get a decision on that, because I typically rather talk about it after the ban, my thoughts on it, than the ban itself, and then have it not be banned, because then I'd just be repeating myself, to be honest, whether it got banned or not. But yeah, go ahead and check out Tony. Hope you guys all enjoyed, and we will see you guys later. Goodbye.
Goodbye.